again here from Liverpool Global Greens Conference. And now I have the pleasure of speaking with Olga Sapilova from Green Russia, which is a division of the Yabloko Party, if I'm saying that correctly, and Olga will do it the definitive way here in a moment. It's very exciting to learn what the, that there is a Russian Green political organization and how they struggle in many of the ways we do to be heard, to get on the ballot, to be included in media coverage. They fight a steep uphill battle, and that's not unfamiliar to us in the U.S., and to hear the issues that they struggle with. So let me turn it over to Olga to say a few words about, first just introduce us to yourself and the Green Russia Party.
At the beginning, I'd like to say some words about our history, where how we were emerged and were created. At the end of 80s, after Perestroika, many green non-governmental organizations were created. It was possible because official persons permitted to unpolitical organizations to start their activity at that time. So at the beginning of 90s, there were many non-governmental environmental organizations in Russia, and many years they were the most strong part of civil society in Russia. But at the beginning of 2nd century, we all green non-political organizations realized that it's impossible to decide problems without political participation. So in 2nd century 5, more than 200 non-governmental environmental organizations signed the memorandum about the creation of a green, independent Green Party. But as the accordance of Russian law, we had many obstacles for creation of the independent party. We couldn't create many departments in the whole Russia, and there were many other obstacles. So we decided to find the appropriate place in the existing political party. And such kind of party was the oldest democratic party, Yabloko. And it was very important for us that this party had many green ideas in their program and their activity. And in 2nd century 6, we created a green faction inside Yabloko party, oldest democratic party. And we started our political activities. We didn't have experience, but we have many ideas. And in the main focus of our activities were anti-nuclear movement and nuclear problems. And we had many activists who were interested in the decision of problem of nuclear power stations.
So this is after the Chernobyl crisis. So there's an anti-nuclear movement.
It's a good question, and it's true. Many activists were interested by the problem after the Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And the leader of our movement, Alexei Yablokov, he was leader of unpolitical part of movement and political part of movement. He was a good specialist in this problem, Chernobyl problem. He issued several books on this subject, and he was the most famous specialist in this problem. So he was head of this movement, and he was a good specialist. And in the focus of our activities were problems connected with the production of nuclear power. In Russia, there are several closed cities where nuclear weapon produce.
I see.
And we have many nuclear power stations, and we have many problems connected with the problem of nuclear waste. Because there are many nuclear waste in Russia, our own nuclear waste, and unfortunately in Russia the law concerning export of nuclear waste was accepted, and
Meaning that nuclear waste was coming to Russia?
Yeah, and
so you're getting other people's nuclear waste
and
now.
In particular for us was very important that Yabloko party, that time the faction in Russian parliament, they voted against this law. And it was very important for us, Greens, when we accepted the decision to go to Yabloko and to create a Green faction there. And we continued our activity on all spectrum of nuclear problems. A nuclear power station, the production of nuclear weapon, and nuclear waste. And we continue this activity from this day still. It's one of our main focus.
Yes. In your fight against nuclear weapons, are you connected to the support now for the nuclear weapons ban treaty, which has just begun to be negotiated at the UN? There's a new treaty, and I know the US, and I believe Russia too, are trying to stop this treaty that would ban nuclear weapons, like we banned chemical weapons, we banned landmines. The US hasn't signed it yet, but I don't know if Russia has either.
It's a very difficult question. Speaking true, it's a very dangerous activity in Russia in this direction.
Meaning to support the weapons ban?
I'll say shortly about my own example. It's the way to Yabloko Party and to Green Russia. I am a sociologist. I am a head of the scientific group of environmental sociology.
Sociologist?
And
so you're an academic?
Yes, and in 2004, I decided to carry out a sociological survey in the closed nuclear city Ozyorsk, in the motherland of nuclear bomb in Russia. And it's the place of 3 nuclear catastrophes. It's very interesting. It was very interesting subject for me as for a researcher. And I issued the special methodic on this subject, and decided to carry out sociological survey there. But my activity was closely connected with non-governmental organizations in this city, because I tried to find out all spectrum of problems in this closed nuclear city. But Federal Service of Security, former KGB, stopped my investigation, and it was a very serious pressure to my activity, my professional activity. And I asked defense from a committee of Russian scientists, and Yablokov was the member of that committee. And he organized press conference on this subject, and it's start of my friendship with Yablokov. And then he asked me to help me to start the activity in order to create a Green Independent Party.
I see.
And then I became his main assistant, and many years I was deputy chairperson in the Green Russia.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this year Alexei Yablokov dead, and it's a great loss for our
So he was like the founder of the environmental movement and also the environmental politics in Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the trouble you had doing your study on the problems of the nuclear weapons manufacturing, your study was squashed, and that's certainly horrible. And we know about that happening here in the U.S. as well, where, for example, in the city of Flint, Michigan, the studies on the contamination of the water were also squashed, and it was thanks to a whistleblower that those studies eventually came to light. But yes, political repression is indeed a terrible thing. So you have mobilized on nuclear weapons, on nuclear waste. What about fossil fuels? Because I know the Russian economy is so dependent on fossil fuels and fracking. I don't know, are you fracking in Russia?
Yes, I do. I know about this problem. Unfortunately, such kind of problem very important for our authorities because it's money.
Yes.
Yes, it's financial base for our government.
Yes.
And we try to keep this problem in the center of our attention too, of course.
Yes.
And there are many violations connected with such kind of problems.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And it's very important, and it's very important for us too. I'll repeat that many our activists under the strict control and pressure. Maybe you know that during 2 years, 2 years ago, the law concerning NGO was accepted, and many of non-governmental green organizations were accepted as foreign agencies. When their activities was connected with foreign grants, for instance. And many of my colleagues are foreign agency now. And in several cases, the pressure was so strong, then people have to to be immigrant. For instance, my friend from the city Ozersk, Nadezhda Kutepova, 2 months ago he got status of political immigrant in France.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
the pressure is so strong. And many cases when it's dangerous for health. For instance, 2007, I personally, with my colleagues, with environmental activists, participated in the march, and it was democratic march, and there were many repressions during this march, and I received two fractures of my face, of my nose and my bone, and I spent the whole month in the hospital. Sometimes it's dangerous for health.
So that was because you participated in a demonstration?
I personally participated, and the officer of special forces beaten me on face, and I had 2 fractures of my face.
Boy.
Yeah.
And why were they assaulting you?
I'm sorry.
Why did they beat you? Why did they attack you?
I think it's their motivation was
To intimidate
yeah,
you?
yeah.
And what was the issue of the demonstration?
That demonstration was legal. Was legal.
And what was it about?
In St. Petersburg, it was in St. Petersburg in 2007, and
In 2007?
yes, we thought there
Yeah.
that it was order of city authorities. They wanted to stop protests.
Yes.
So
What-
they did that. This method was
Yes.
good.
What was that protest about?
With several ideas on the protests. Several parties were drawn from the electoral process.
Oh, I see. So it was for...
In particular, my party. That's why I participated. It were elections to city parliament, and my party and some other party were drawn over the process.
You were like locked out?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the reason for
Yes.
the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so tell a little bit more about the obstacles to participating in the political process. What do you have to go through in order to register, in order to be a part of the election? Do you get covered by the media? How much money do you have to raise? You know, how does that work for a small party? I know you're part of a larger party, Yabloko, but what kind of barriers are there to political participation in Russia?
It's a very interesting question because the Russian law is very flexible. Sometimes officials create false parties, and the process is very simple. But when they see that concrete forces they have positive and democratic ideas, immediately many obstacles appear. For us, always. When we try to create independent Green Party, all points of the law were actual for us. It was necessary to sign 50,000 signs and to create departments in not less than half region of Russia, and it's about 45 regions.
So,
it's very difficult.
So it's like
tasks.
50,000 signatures, is
Yeah.
that right? And that's in order to run for parliament, or in order to run, just to have a party?
In order to create party.
Create a party, you need 50,000 signatures.
But sometimes it's necessary to gather signs
Yes.
in order to participate in the elections. When we have deputies in regional parliament, then, we're free of this duty. When not, we have to gather signatures. And for instance, in 2018, our leader is going to participate in presidential elections, and our party we must to gather 1 million signatures.
A million signatures
And,
in order to run a candidate for president. That's pretty steep.
Yes,
Yeah.
They will test all sign very, very seriously.
Yes, so they look at the signatures and they throw them out. Same, that happens to us in the U.S. as well.
As to mass media, it's the same. It's the same. when we are in the electoral process, as to accordance of the law, we have some free mass media time, but it's a miserable time. So we have to pay for each minute of mass media time. And it's a very difficult problem for us. Between the period of the elections, many of our well-known persons are at the top list of mass media in the order of official authorities. For instance, our former leader, Alexei Yablokov, was well known in the whole Russia because he was very famous environmentalist, very famous scientist. And before our entered to Yablokov, he was very famous. When we created faction, Green Faction in Yabloko Party, he was in stop list, and it was difficult to organize their contacts with mass media. They liked him very much because he very emotional, he very charismatic personality, but they couldn't.
So you called it a stop list? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
So they stop you. We call it a blacklist here,
Yes.
where you're or you get whited out or blacked out. People may recognize. I mean, some of these things may sound a little bit familiar about being locked out of media, about having to collect an inordinate number of signatures, about the signatures getting thrown out. There are some things that just ring very true here about political dissidents having a very hard time and you don't have American media in Russia that will cover you. We have Russian media here in the U.S. that will cover U.S. dissidents. It may not cover Russian dissidents, but it will come here and cover U.S. dissidents. But you don't have that good fortune to have American media lifting up Russian dissidents. So the struggle goes on, and there are many things that that we have in common as Greens: our opposition to nuclear weapons, to nuclear energy, to polluting fossil fuels, to environmental destruction, to supporting open political dialogue and participation, and also to supporting the rights of immigrants, fighting for human rights, and trying to ramp down the arms race between our countries and trying to ramp down the conflict, the potential conflict between our countries. So I'm very grateful to Olga for being with us today and glad to know you so we can continue this dialogue and try to move us forward in a way that supports democracy, justice, and peace that we need so badly.
I'm very glad that we know about each other more this day, and I hope that our dialogue will continue.
Thank you, and
Thank
best of
you.
luck in your upcoming races. Olga did very well, came in second out of many parties and not very far behind. So keep up the fight, and we're behind you all the way.
And our best wishes to your party too.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.